Okay, my friends, welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc on another Wednesday evening. I'm excited to have you. Thank you for joining me as always. I am excited to be here, and I'm always excited about the people who I have joining me on this broadcast. And again, who I have this evening is one of my longtime friends, Bishop Linval Hendricks. But like everybody else, sometimes you have your friends and you think you really know your friend's story, but then you get to find out you haven't even known the beginning. The half has never been told. And so I am sure that a lot of you who know Bishop Hendricks think you really know him. But you're going to find out that you really didn't know the man as much as you thought you know him. So when I come back, I'm going to be talking to Bishop Linval Hendricks, and a very popular man in the Northeast. If you're in the Northeast in the United States, sure you got a prophecy particular, you'll know this man. So when I come back, I will talk to Bishop Linval Hendricks. Hang in there, my friends. ORB Ministry presents Let's Talk with the Doc. Grace Without Borders podcast. A thought for you. Ask Pastor. And a whole lot more. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. All right. Well, thank you, my friends. And as always, we say if you have one response that you can do and how you can get involved is just hit your share button and tell your friends about it because you want your friends to become part of this conversation, to know what's happening. You don't want somebody telling them that I bless it. Just hit your share button, invite a few friends to join us, whether you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook, and let's have this conversation. Again, I am as excited as ever because I've known this brother, a friend of mine from 1995, and just glancing through at it, a little bit of brief bio, and I am astounded already. Just glancing through it, I'm saying, "Oh my God! I thought I knew the man. I thought I knew a little bit about his journey, but boy, I'm seeing it unfolding here." Bishop Hendricks, welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc. It is just my pleasure to have you. I know you're the busiest man around and the hardest man to get, but boy, I'm glad you sneaked this time in just to have this conversation with me. Welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc.
Thank you, my brother, Bishop Beckford. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too, man. You may have known this because we've spent time together, and you know how much I have a lot of respect for you. I respect your grasp on the word. I respect your humility. I respect your approach to ministry, your dedication, and the fight that is in you, because you are a fighter. You are a fighter. But before we get to that, man, and by the way, let me just say you are looking as good as ever. You're looking as good as I can recall you looking, man. You look like you have got to the point where you never grow old, like you're not really growing old. So
Thank you, my brother.
you're beating all the odds, man. You're beating all the odds, and you're hanging in there. All right. So I like to talk to people about their beginning days of their lives. What their story has been. I noticed that you're born in St. Elizabeth. I like to track people back and say what it has been like before you were Bishop Hendricks or Mr. Linval Hendricks. What was it like when the only name we hear is Linval?
Yes. The first time I heard that name and become conscious of it, of course, was in St. Elizabeth, a little district, Union District. Most people will know Balaclava because it was one of the train stops.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was
I remember
born.
that balaclava thing. I remember that.
Yes. So that's where I'm from. Wherever I go and somebody asks me where I'm from, whether they are Jamaicans or others, I say St. Elizabeth. I'm
Okay.
proud of my parish, and that's where I was born.
And for those who don't, that's where red dirt born and grow, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
All Jamaicans know Saint Elizabeth for red dirt, man.
Mhm.
That's yeah, the red dirt parish. All right. So, how many siblings you have? I see you were born to Clarice and William Hendricks. So, what were siblings like?
I have three sisters,
Oh,
Valerie, the oldest, and Naomi, and Lunis. Now, Lunis has gone on to be with the Lord.
I'm
She
sorry.
was the first lady at Poughkeepsie. Her husband, Bishop Kenneth McBean, a
Mm.
very good man.
Oh yeah, wait. You know what? Yeah, come you think of it. Yeah, I remember that. Now that you go back to MacBean. Okay. All right, good. I remember you remember that quite well. All right. Sorry about
Yeah, I have an older brother. He was before my father met my mother. His name is Horace
Mhm.
Hendricks, and he's still alive. He's in Saint Thomas.
Okay. So he's still in Jamaica.
Yes.
Um. Uh, so what was it like among them? What was it like among them? Where did you fall, and what was the dynamic? Among the siblings growing up, who dominates or what?
Well, I was the I am the only son for my mother.
Okay.
Um, the second boy for my father. I was blessed to be born, the only one of my siblings to be born in St. Elizabeth. Of course, my mom is from St. Elizabeth, Union District. Her mother was Anna Neal.
Hmm.
And I remember that the early days of my infancy was in Kingston until 4 years old, when I spent the rest of the time from 4 to 11 years old with my grandmother in Balaclava. Now, my oldest sister Valerie, being the oldest, she was the oldest one, of course, based on our culture.
Hmm.
The oldest one bear the responsibility to take care of the younger.
Right. Right.
So we've always respected Valerie to this day. I'm 67 years old. To this day, I respect my sister, and she talked to me at times, and if she have advice to give me, I listen. She always give me sound advice. She was like the lawyer for us in the family.
All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. So yeah, yeah. So the respect and the camaraderie, the bonding and the blending continues even into this age. And as you said that, I noticed that you were born 1 year before me, man. 1 year and 1 month before me. So
Wow.
we're kind of pretty close down the same path. I noticed that a lot of people that I talk to, we have some things in common. All right, so notice that interesting that you also christened at the Seventh Day Adventist Church, and then you attend Sunday school at the Baptist Church. So what's the dynamic going on there?
I'm well rounded.
Nicely put, because now born Christian the Baptist, go to Sunday Christian the Adventist, go to Sunday school in the Baptist, and now I'm a Pentecostal.
Yes, on both sides of my family, I've been so blessed that you have Christians, be they Seventh day Adventists or Baptists. My grandmother's side, her sister, which was my godmother,
Mhm.
That's where the influence from to be christened as a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay. All
So I
right.
remember going to Sabbath school, and it was very interesting to me because as young as I was at that time, um, they would give testimony. That's the first time I heard testimony was in the Sabbath church. And I used to sit there and wonder, did the people make up these stories and
Uh-huh.
then come? Did everybody try to outdo each other with a story?
All right. Okay. All right.
And then
How were the real experiences, right?
that's it. So St. John the Baptist Church, that's my grandmother now, that's her church.
Mm-hmm.
And the preacher used to stutter. And it would fascinate me when I would go to church and to listen to him preach.
Mm-hmm.
You would stay awake just to hear him stutter. That church was located just as you enter into Balaclava by train. When
Mm-hmm.
you come under that tunnel to the right, you would see some gravestones.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Baptist cemetery. That's the church that I went to in St. Elizabeth as Sunday school time.
All right. All right. All right. Okay. So, after your grandmother, you growing up 11 years old. What happened? Where did your life go after that? Where, I know you gone to school. Where did your life go as you grew up into teenage and becoming a young man?
Um, my adolescent years, what got me a fast ticket back to Kingston um, was actually an incident. As you know, in school in Jamaica and Friday in the country, you would have school maybe for half days.
Half day school, man. I remember that quite well.
The girl goes to sew, boys go to learn gardening or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it
Yeah.
was a Friday, my grandmother sent me to my grand aunt. I was supposed to come back and go to school. But I know how the day is going to go at school. So I decided to hang out with my friends who didn't go to school down at what we call the mall hall.
Okay. All right.
And we were there getting in mischief. And that's the first time I get to smoke some weed.
Oh, dear Lord of mercy. What age were you that time?
I was about between 10 and 11.
Oh my goodness, that was still pretty young, man. That
And
was
I was one of the oldest ones.
oh dear Father. All right.
So we I took a donkey, a man's donkey. As two times I ride a donkey, the first and the last, and that was the first and the last. And that donkey threw me.
Oh my
And
God.
when I came to myself, I was being dragged. The rope was around my ankle.
Oh wow.
And that was my first miracle because I look back now as a man to see where did a boy, not even fully 11 years old yet, being dragged by his ankle, how did he get up,
Mm.
sat up, bend over, and unloose himself? That's
Wow.
what happened. I reach over and the tip of my finger touched the rope and I was free. But
Wow.
then I discovered that my head was a mess.
Wow.
The scalp was literally hanging.
What? Oh my
And when my grandmother saw that, she said, "This is it. You going to your mother.
wow.
Not gonna kill yourself down here. You are daughter one picnic."
Oh my goodness.
So I got a fast track ticket back to Kingston, and that's where I get into my teenage years from that time.
I can imagine because I know the donkey story. I know exactly. I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning what that looks like because I've been there, done that, seen that. So I know exactly what it is. But man, my heart grieve for that. But so now you're going back to you get a fast ticket, a one-way ticket back to Kingston to your mother, battered, bruised, wounded, humiliated, disappointed.
Yes. Back to my father's discipline.
Hmm.
And that was it. I grew up, I feared my father.
Oh, so the father wasn't. Oh, yeah, you say you were with your grandmother.
Right. So
Yeah.
my father, he was a no nonsense father,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had to walk the straight and narrow,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I in Kingston 13, a rough neighborhood.
Rough neighborhood, Kingston
Yes,
13.
yes,
Wow. So so and especially coming back with the potential to take risks and chances that maybe make your father gonna have even a closer eye on you because maybe say this boy I have to keep an eye on him, right?
yes. But the Bible said that foolishness
It's in the
is in the
heart.
heart of a child,
Rather correction.
and the foolishness was there with me. Kingston, as dreaded that it might sound to some people nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
but we had communities.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows everybody, and one person might dread coming into your community, but the dread is not in your community. You know everybody in the community.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And that is quite clear. That is because you wonder when sometimes you're trying to ride through, drive through, walk through, and you're so intimidated, fear looking over your shoulder while everybody's like they're just relaxed, having the best time of their lives. So you're right with that. You know what? I've never heard it put that way, but that is so clearly put and so true. All right. Again, I'm talking to Bishop Linval Hendricks. This is a friend of mine. This man is ministry oriented. He has so such great history, and I can't wait to just to begin to tap into it because what I think is going to happen right now, I'm only going to be able to break the ice, to break ground with this man's story. Already, Bishop, already I am thinking that you will have to plan to come back for round two because some of the things that I want to talk to you that are ministry oriented and future oriented where the church is where we see it going as it pertains to young people ministry etc. We're gonna need another conversation on that, but looking through your story here, this is very interesting. So um I see you and Kingston 13, you attended
Russell,
Rossa and John Mills Primary School. Your family migrated to the United States in 1971. So now you are transitioned into a whole different place and culture, uh, everything. What was that like when you moved from Kingston 13 to United States, and where did you land in United States, and what was it like?
the timing was perfect for my mother and father, um, because I was now a teenager, 16 years old,
Hmm.
going on 17. And my mother was living in the United States. My father was there with us, but the gang began to have its influence on me.
Oh wow.
Um, Thank God that I didn't end up hurting anybody, or didn't get hurt seriously myself. But we were on a corner. Everybody in Kingston have a corner. And the corner that I was on, um, it turned out later on, even after I left, I would hear about my friends who got shot and this one and that one. But then a lot of people also migrated. So I came to the United States in 71. At that time, I was just 17 years old.
Mhm.
And it was shock in every way, culture shock, weather shock. I arrived at Kennedy Airport December the 4th, 1971. And I thought walking from the tarmac to the building, I thought my brain would freeze. I just couldn't believe that anything could be this cold.
Yeah, you're right. You're right about that.
And then driving from Kennedy to Albany, it took hours.
Yeah, that was
It
yeah.
felt like it was about 3 hours. And I arrived in Albany. The buildings weren't, as you watch and see it on TV. You see brick buildings, and my dad, who was a mason, by, construction worker.
Mm-hmm.
He said that there's a lot of unfinished building in America because the bricks were just raw
Mm.
and they weren't covered. Like
Wow.
in Jamaica, you have,
Okay, you have mortar and you have the
like,
dredge up. Yeah. Okay.
and my father thought they were unfinished buildings.
Oh.
So he wasn't impressed.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a
So
good one.
we moved to Albany, and that's where now there's a shift in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Albany that I met some friends, teenage friends. I was the only boy in my family, so you got to reach outside to meet other young men. And that was when I met a particular friend, and he was here as a student um, and a scholarship, and he stick to the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin to talk, and that's the first time anyone has ever talked to me about Africa in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
um, and especially Ethiopia. So he introduced that to me, and I began to study. He was a Rasta man, but intellectual Rasta.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when it drew me into the Bible. And that's interesting because, like I told you, I went to school, primary school, and in primary school, you learn about the Bible in Sunday school, but nowhere ever did anyone do my entire Christian early development, no one has ever helped me to identify myself in the Bible
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until this young man, who was my peer, introduced me to the term Ethiopia.
I'm going to get back to that guy because I find that that's going to be very, very interesting when how the transition and how the influence impact your life. I noticed that that is stated here that the 70s is where your whole life has been shaped in the 70s. So then you were 20s kind of, 50s to 20s to 70s, so teens, high teens, going 20s, and so your entire world got shaped or reshaped in the 70s, and then when it touched the 80s, it transitioned into something else again. So I noticed, and I didn't know this because before we get to the ministry aspect of it and the Africa study and uh, the Christianity part of it, I didn't know you were an electrician, man. I know. I know. That's what this does, man. That's what this does. We find out who people really are, whether they're practicing it or no. We know that they have some of these skills in the repertoire, man. That is interesting. I've never imagined anything like that.
Industrial. There's a company in Albany called Niagara Mohawk. Um, my good brother and friend, who is a deacon up in Albany, New York, he's retired
Mhm.
from Niagara Mohawk. We were basically on the same crew. And I went into the company with that opportunity to one day become an electrician.
Mhm.
And the transformer shop, that's where I ended up, in the transformer shop and working on transformers, power transformers.
Wow.
You have the pole transformers
Yeah.
and you have the power transformers.
Oh,
These
they're
are
the bigger units in
right,
where the power comes from.
right. You have them in cities. They would be underground. In New York City, they have a network of transformers, power grills.
Hmm.
And so that was my job. That's what I did. I work on power transformers. I work on the pole transformers, and it was very, very dangerous job.
I imagine anything electricity in that high voltage
Oh
area.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
It's the amp. It's the amp that kill you.
Right.
You know, 1/8 of an amp can kill you.
Wow.
And the time that you're working with, you know, very high amperage, and you have to be safe. But if you know the rules, the safety rules,
Mm-hmm.
and you abide by it,
Mm-hmm.
save your life and your crewmen your life. So my specialty was power transformers, and you know, work with capacitors, oil breakers. You would have the station yard, substations, and you maintain the equipment in the substation. So that's that's what I chose to do, and I was happy doing that. But God called me,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, the day when I went to personnel and tell them that I will be retiring early, they look at me like I was crazy. And this guy named Al Stuckey, who was in personnel at the time, he asked me, he said, you sure you know what you're doing?
What age were you when you try to when you want to retire?
At the time, I was, I went to Buffalo when I was 20, 28. So I was in my late 30s. I just put in 10 years with the company,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, working in that field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was still a young man. And, you know, in company, you invest in a company, you know, you have a bright future, they
Right.
pay well.
Right.
Who would want to,
Retire that soon.
you know? But I answered the call, and all of that happened in the 70s. The 70s,
I'm coming back to the 70s thing here because I'm going to pinpoint a few things that I see happening in the 70s. In the 70s, a lot happened to my life in the 70s. I returned to the Lord, recommit my life in the 70s, 72. So my life took a complete different direction in 72, and this is where I am from that day forward to this day. So this is an interesting story, man. Just hearing that aspect of it, and I wonder how many people, I just say, I wonder how many people would even know that Linval Hendricks, first career was in high powered amperage and voltage stuff, working on and electrical equipment like that. That is incredible. So I'm sure that somebody learned something right there already. My friends, I'm talking to Bishop Linval Hendricks, my friend since 1990 to the 1990s. Kind of grow into friendship. I met him in the 95 when I came to the United States, 94 when I went to Rochester, New York. We'll talk a bit more about that because I didn't even know that you were. I may have heard that. I think I may have heard that, but it didn't resonate in me that you have been to Buffalo twice. But I think I may have heard that. But now it's really coming to place. And if you haven't shared this yet, my friends, it's time for you to share now with your friends, Facebook, YouTube. Tell somebody about it because we have a lot more to discover with this man. We're just getting into the nitty gritty. So now we are in the 70s where it all happens. All right. So during the decade of the 70s, that great and various changes took place in your life. You decided to become a Rastaman. So now tell me, we're gonna come back to the Bible study thing because I find that fascinating. As you were influenced by this Jamaican Rastafarian. So tell my friends, tell your friends, tell the rest of us who are watching this program, what was it like? Tell us about the beginning of that transition into Rastafarianism.
Well, at the root is the culture. I grew up in a culture, even though my parents were Christians and we go to church, Sunday school, etc., etc. The exposure to the music, reggae music. First, it was ska, you know,
Mhm.
and there was a sound called bells that came from the very lane that I used to live on. And so, as a child, you exposed to the music. You're hearing the music, and then it went from ska to reggae,
We have ska,
and
cha cha, we have reggae, right?
right.
Cha cha cha.
Then that's when you sneak to go out to the dance as a young man, and your father lock you out. But you didn't mind getting locked out
Didn't like
because
it
you were
like
able, yes, you were able to listen to the various sounds,
oh my goodness.
And so in America now, still clinging to the music, the reggae music,
Hmm.
and then I begin to learn what Rastafarianism is really all about. It's
So
not
you,
just
so you consider veering off from the Adventist Baptist tradition that you're taught and brought up in. So you were now saying, okay, I'm veering off from that. I sneak out to get music because of the influence of the music, and we've all been there, done that. Music captures your heart, and then you forget your ground, your roots, and all of that stuff because the music is so fascinating, so captivating, and so controlling. So now it sucks you in like an octopus.
Mhm. So, you have, of course, the leading influence at the time, um, Bob Marley.
Hmm.
Um, people don't understand that you have different type of reggae music.
Right.
You have the dub music, the music that is not played on the radio.
Hmm.
Um,
The
that
dance music.
strong cultural reggae music, and so listening to Bob and then begin meeting my friend at the time, who began to tell me more about Rastafarianism. We learned that Ras is actually a title. Ras in Ethiopia is prince. And so Selassie, crown prince, was Tafari. So he is Prince Tafari. So we get to understand that's what that is all about.
Hmm.
Then you begin to study Ethiopian history, based, of course, on the dynasty of the kings of Ethiopia. There's a book called Negus Nagas, King of Kings.
Hmm.
So we begin to study more, and it's become more fascinating. You're studying these things, and you're actually finding it in the Bible.
Hmm.
And so that just pulled me into not just Rastafarianism, but the Bible itself.
You find it in the Bible with a little twist, right?
Yes,
With
yes.
a little twist. All
There are
right.
things you can read into.
Read it with a yeah. Okay.
For
All right.
example, the Queen of Sheba.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Queen of Sheba, um, by Ethiopians, claiming that Queen of Sheba was actually Queen of Ethiopia, and that when she went to see Solomon, she ended up getting pregnant and came back with a son, which would be the heir of Solomon. Well, you can't find that in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but um, Queen of Sheba did went to Ethiopia. She did meet Solomon. She did return to Ethiopia, but nothing that says she slept with him and that she was pregnant for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So these are the things that you would read, and then there's speculation. But if you're a Bible believing individuals, show me chapter and verse.
But then you when you find a portion of the story in the scriptures, the next approach to it is that they hide a portion from you in the Bible for a certain ulterior motive, some other reasons why they don't tell you the full story.
Right. You would have to go to Ethiopia and study the writings of
Mhm.
Ethiopian authors for them to tell you their story. And anybody could write about me, but I think the best person to write about me would be me or somebody who knows me.
And that's why an autobiography is always better than a biography, because the
Yeah.
autobiography comes directly from the man himself or the woman herself. So that's the detail of the story. If whatever is in the autobiography outweighs what's in the biography, right? I've heard this, Bishop, that as we find some of these stories, or portion of these stories that we find in the canonized version of the Bible, what we considered authentic and inspired, and then the Rasta man who gets a portion of that, and then he gets the other piece from somewhere else, and he says, this is what is real, because this is what they hide from you. They tell you only piece of it, and now we're telling you the whole of it.
Yes, that's basically the story, you know. And we find that happening a lot right now. Um, and we see a lot of our children, black young people go off to college and they come back, and some of them renouncing Christ
Hmm.
because they're saying that the black Jew or the Hebrew are the true Israel. And many times, pastors and church leaders are not prepared to give them an explanation when they ask certain questions.
Right.
And that just frustrates them and push them further to study something that somebody else is teaching to be factual,
Hmm. Hmm.
when their own leaders fail to respond to their questions.
Hmm.
So I think that as far as people of color, we owe it to ourselves to know ourselves. And if we're in the Bible, we should be able to identify it in the Bible
Hmm.
and let our children know, because that is important.
Hmm.
You know, I remember growing up seeing so many pictures of everybody in the Bible were white, they were Caucasian, and I couldn't identify with that. But now, when you read and you begin to see the different parts of the world
Hmm.
where certain people are hailed from, it make a big difference.
I hear you.
You know,
I hear you. I hear you. Again, this is Bishop Linval Hendricks. We're just talking about the beginning stage. We're getting to church ministry yet story. All right. So Bishop, so tell me now, because we're going back to the Rastafarian aspect of it, because a lot of people, I don't think, even know that you were a Rastafarian, if not by appearance, at least internally by influence, by doctrine. So tell us about your attraction to that, your studying to that, your finding into that, and your transition from that.
well, I was fascinated, as I stated before, in the culture,
Hmm.
um, the music, the music captured me.
The
You know,
rhythm, the
as
rhythm, the consistency, the
yes, and not
sustain.
only that, but the message in the
Yes,
music.
right. You were talking about different types of reggae,
Yes,
right? That's
yes.
where we break off from, and the message reggae and the dub reggae and the kind of stuff. So pick it up from there, and then the influence.
One of my favorite reggae music at the time was a music called Sata Masagana.
Sata Masagana. All
Yes,
right, I know that one too. Sata Masagana.
there are
Yeah.
several versions of Masagana,
Uh-huh.
and of course, it means praise.
Hmm.
And but then the transition from the music now to the spoken word, um, and the written word, was to look and see what's really written in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the first 5 books of the Bible was written by an African by the name of Moses.
Moses, all right.
Um, you see, when I say that, people kind of look at you like, what do you mean? I was preaching a funeral in Jamaica some years ago, and in the close of my message, I repeated that blessing that is in Numbers chapter 6 from verse 23 on down. The Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord. But I mentioned that a great African leader instructed his brother, who was a great African priest, that when the people of God come in and out, bless them in this way. So after I finished, a young lady came to me, well spoken. She was a teacher. She said, I was not here. I missed the message.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody told me that you say Moses was an African. So I looked at her and I said, yes. She said, do you mind showing me that in the Bible? And I smiled and I said to her, where was Moses born? She said, in Egypt. I
So
said,
where is Egypt?
where is Egypt? And the light turned on in her head. You see, the racists would not let you identify Egypt with Africa. They tell you that Egypt is the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is no country called the Middle East. There is no continent called the Middle East.
Right.
Africa is the continent, and Egypt is a country in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So Moses' people spent 400 years in Africa.
So those of us who know archaeology and geography and put Bible on the ground, right? Put Bible on the ground, we will understand that. But yes, yeah, we can see how alarming that could become for somebody who never really put the biblical terms on the ground, let alone in Africa.
And as basic as that is,
Mm-hmm.
that is the ABC. You
ABC.
should know that.
Right.
We talk about the story of Moses and the bulrush and Moses. Everybody know Moses, but how many identify Moses to be an African?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See? Now, another thing that people, the way people think, the thinking, the mentality of people. When I say Moses was an African, I never say Moses was black.
Right, right. But immediately that's what pops up in the mind. Without analyzing what I just said, you just say, "Oh, he was African." Oh, yeah. So that means you're saying he was black.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
see, and what people don't realize is that Africa is the home of mankind. That's the home of creation. That's where Adam and Eve were created. Okay? Now, when you say a person is an African, based on how we think, how we were programmed to think, we see blackness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now, if you say an Egyptian is African, that's when people begin to raise the eyebrow and make you wonder, So people need to have an appreciation for Africa itself. And I think that's one of the things that Rastafarianism bring home to me, that level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. 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 All right, and that is deep stuff. That is deep stuff. That can be delivered from surface, because it needs a lot of understanding in order to bring that out within context, so people can grasp it. So yes, that is a different dimension of study and presentation, comparing that to biblical understanding and what we understand. Because again, reading Bible does not necessarily give you a great picture just reading scripture by itself. And when I did, I was telling one lady, my last guest that I had, when I did archaeology and geography, that brings Bible to life, and it puts it in a place in a local that you can better understand journey and where the thing actually took place. But a lot of us never look at where things took place. We just read it as something somewhere in outer space.
Mhm.
All right, so you've been influenced one in and then you've been influenced out. So tell us about the transition.
So as I begin to study Ethiopian history, and I begin to study the man, Emperor Haile Selassie,
Mm-hmm.
right away I listened to Selassie's words. And Selassie, in one of his speech, he was saying that we in Ethiopia have had one of the oldest version of the Bible. And he says he read his Bible daily. And so he encouraged Ethiopian to read their Bibles.
Mm-hmm.
He also talked about the lordship of Jesus Christ. And so Selassie himself, who the emperor, is also the guardian of the faith in Ethiopia,
Mm-hmm.
the Coptic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I look at that and I said, okay, so Selassie is not God. Um, so Selassie is pointing you to God.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling you that he bowed to Jesus Christ.
Wow.
So if Selassie can bow, then my parents was right all along.
Oh, that's interesting right there. That's interesting. So yeah, give me a little bit more on that one.
So, my parents, it's almost like Acres of Diamond. If you ever heard the story about Acres of Diamonds,
Yeah.
it's a little booklet, and anybody that can find it, read it. So this South African farmer, you know, um, a lot of people was selling their farm to go mine and go look for diamond mine.
Mm.
And right in his yard, there was a stream.
Wow.
And in that stream, he had a rock. The new owner found a rock in the stream, very peculiar rock. So he used it to stop his door, a door stop.
Mhm.
Long story short, the thing turned out to be diamond. One of the biggest diamond mine there from in South Africa was from this farmer who sold his land
Sold his
to
land.
go look for diamond.
Oh my goodness! Like
So
that.
that's why I say my parents was right all along.
Yeah.
Because all my life, my parents believe in Jesus Christ and was telling me about Christ, but I had to find my own God. I have to find God for myself.
The
And
God
so
that
you go
the God
all
that
around, became a Rasta, only to come back and bow to the God that your parents had taught you to bow to all along.
so where you left from to go look for him and then come back, he's right where you left from, right?
Come back here to the
So you
place.
took a long journey to go to find him to come back right there. He's right here.
And my parents, you talk about the transition. I firmly believe the prayers of my parents. I believe in the prayer of my parents. And I'll tell anybody, don't underestimate the prayer of praying, God fearing parents. And when the prayer began to take effect, because I had my own house now, my own apartment,
Mm-hmm.
my father let me know two bull can rain in one pen.
Yeah, we hear that, right?
So I went out and living a Rasta life. And God used to wake me up after I got high, stone high. We smoked the spliff, but I prefer the pipe.
You prefer the pipe.
And I would go to bed stone high.
Wow.
And God would wake me up like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my brother, I find myself bowing on my knees at my bedside, praying
Mm.
to God.
Mm.
And the Lord was pulling me out of this thing, but I was holding on. And we used to bless the chalice. You bless the chalice and you say, Jah, Rastafari.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anymore. But I was still blessing the chalice. And this time I blessed the chalice. I said, I bless this in the name of the Father and
Oh,
of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. So my
one
friends,
second. That's
my,
interesting.
my
So
brethren, my friends and brethren, they say, hold on there.
uh,
Man, the God is a ghost aya.
so now you realize that the chalice need blessing,
Yes.
but now you realize that the blessing is not Helisei.
I said, no,
You
I
got it.
couldn't do it.
He's not the God, but you still now the God that is still need a blessing from God. So turning back to the God of your parents. And
Yes.
you're not only say God Almighty, you're going to Father, Son, and Holy Ghost to bless the chalice.
Right, because to me, I was more an enlightened Rasta than the rest of them.
Ah,
So, and the thing is, I was bold to do whatever I'm convinced is right. So I didn't care what they think.
wow.
And I was ready to fight if somebody wanted to disrespect me for blessing the chalice the way I did. So I
Wow.
told them, I said, listen, I didn't bless this to man, I blessed it to God.
Wow.
And then eventually I had to move, I had to leave, I had to go back to my parents' house.
Wow. That is this. Listen, this is one of the reasons why Let's Talk with the Doc is so important, because these are things that you will never hear. And what I never said to you at the beginning, Bishop, is that uh, people don't get to know us when they see us preaching in the administrative place and the platform preaching, and your articulation, your ability to deliver, your pastoral effectiveness. People sometimes don't know where we come from, and sometimes they don't place us in this human journey that we've had these experiences ups and down, and those are contributing factors to how you're able to minister to people too. Because I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the journey here, and sometimes God allows us to veer off so we can come back better. Because I think purpose has already been in your life, and I'm beginning to talk more about purpose these days than any other time, because purpose works itself out. Our dream comes from our fascination sometimes, but purpose is often designed by God and put in place. And even when we move like you have moved, but I think that God used your transitioning to make you more knowledgeable and more able to speak for him and on his behalf, because you've gone down the road to learn more, and you're able to put them into perspective. So I see purpose here. So now the blessing come back. Now I'm having it both ways, right? I'm taking the cali weed, I'm taking it on the chalice, but I'm giving God Almighty the glory for the blessings in this. And so where we go from there.
Then, Paul wrote, and Paul was talking about, those who eat meat and those who didn't. And so Paul was
Romans, yeah.
addressing in Romans.
Hmm.
And so the verse that captured me when he said that, one would eat meat, another who is weak eateth herbs.
Eat herbs,
Of
yeah.
course, he's talking about being a vegetarian.
Exactly.
But among Rastas, we always interpret herb
To be
to
the
be
weak.
weed, ganja.
Yeah, I know
So we
that.
say that God gave herb for the purposes of man.
Uh-huh.
And so I just transition it in my own mind to say, wait a minute. That means if I am smoking herb
Hmm.
um, to more or less get strength mentally, then it means that I'm dependent on something other than myself or God.
Hmm.
So that's when I stopped smoking weed. I don't need it. I'm not weak. So if you're weak minded or weak to where you feel that you need it. I don't condemn you, but as for me, my strength now is in God, and I don't need herb to go into any deeper dimension with God
So
because He has given to me the Holy Spirit.
so your concept then, or your belief then, was that the herb was used for mental boost or an enhancement of your own ability.
Right.
And now you're saying if I have to depend on that, then something is really wrong.
Yes.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
really weak.
I'm really weak. Okay. And so you stop smoking the herb, and then and where was the Rastafarianism influence now? Did that go with that, or what happened?
Yes. It went with that because, it served its purpose. If its purpose was to bring me into the Bible, then it has achieved its purpose.
Mhm.
But now I found something greater. You know, um, Jesus said that the Queen of the South, she came to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, a greater than Solomon is here.
Then Solomon is here. Amen.
And that's what happened. Rastafarianism might have, influenced me to study the Word, and when I did, behold, a greater than Selassie is here.
Mm. Wow. That is great stuff. That is great stuff. You're hearing it from the quote unquote horse's mouth. This is Bishop Linval Hendricks, my friend for many, many years, who has journeyed. And you hear the beginning part of that. We haven't even touched on his ministry, because now the Lord is bringing him from taking him into studies to bringing him into now into ministry. And so we're still in the 70s. So I'm going to just read what's here in the 70s. I'm going to read what's in the 70s. So the 70s is everything. Decided to become a Rasta man. In the 70s, he became a Christian, called into ministry in the 70s, got married in the 70s, appointed to serve as district overseer during the decade of the 70s. Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were district overseer before you even became pastor. That was kind of interesting. That's breaking news to me. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know in our church that happened. So we're gonna. I never know that was individually separated from pastoral ministry, having not pastored before. I could understand if you were pastoring before that. Now they could say, okay, but to make you a disc overseer even before you get into pastoral work, that was a little bit different. But let me continue reading a little bit more in the 17th and come back for you to tell me how these unfold. In the early 70s, while living in Albany, Linval met this young fellow. So that was, we kind of talk about that already. So that was part of the 70s. So tell me now, the influence come back. I'm not depending on weed or herb, as we call it. That was, herb was the what I can call it, the Christian name for ganja, right? Or marijuana. That was the professional name.
Right. Rastaman quoted from Genesis where God gave herb for the services of man.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, he's talking about medicine and various other things. Herb cover,
Yeah.
but of course, Rastaman
Then
just
narrow it down to the one thing, narrow it down
right.
to the one thing.
So, as a Christian now, I begin to really study the Bible. I begin to look at what I studied formerly as a Rasta, begin to study that now from a Christian perspective.
With a spiritual eye.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit, you're in a church community, and I am out on the street in Albany giving out tracts. I'm witnessing, I'm sharing the word of God. And a young man came up from Brooklyn at the time. He was living in Brooklyn. And he came up, a young man by the name of Earl Halbaro.
Oh, I know Halbaro.
Yeah, he's currently pastor in a church in Georgia, a
Oh
church
yeah,
that
yeah.
he started.
I actually been to his house in Georgia.
Right. He New Life. And when he came to Albany, it was my early stage in the Lord. And one day he and I were walking in the Arbor Hill section of Albany. And we went to a place on Colony Street and we're talking about preaching. So we went on the street corner, just he and I. And he preached. He preached the gospel and then he said, "Now it's your turn."
Now it's your turn.
I
So
preached
we're
my
gonna have
first,
double preaching out there for that time.
I preached my first message on the corner of Colony Street in Albany, New York. And the person that was there with me at the time, like a mentor, was Earl Halbara.
Wow.
That's my friend for the past 40 odd years.
Wow.
And so he was young, and I respected him because he preached the gospel, I mean, so boldly. And and of course, he knew my journey because he talked with my parents.
Hmm.
And from there, my pastor, Richard Joseph, short man, his wife Adlit Joseph, he um, he was my pastor. He baptized me, but he could see in me the call of God,
Hmm.
and so he set me forth one Sunday morning. Um, Bishop Benjamin Lawrence
Hmm.
was in town, and Benjamin Lawrence prayed over me that Sunday morning at 181 Northern Boulevard in Albany, New York.
I hear
Little
you.
storefront church. That's where I was sent forth in the ministry.
Okay,
And
okay.
this was maybe around in ending part of 75. I joined the church in 74, got baptized in church in 74. 75 was set forth as a lay minister. And, in 76, um, I think that's when I got something happened in 76. I can't quite remember. But in 77, I got married.
Hmm.
And then I was appointed as district overseer over the churches in Albany. Amsterdam then is a Spanish congregation, but the Spanish and the English were all together. So I was overseer for Albany, Amsterdam, um, Newburgh, Highland Falls, and I believe Binghamton. Yeah.
I kind of find that really really interesting. I when I read that, I found that very interesting. As again I said, it's a kind of a little quick shocker to my system because I didn't know. I didn't know, and I don't know if that was even the norm. That may be the exception. That maybe because of what they saw in you, maybe because of your grasp on the word on both sides, and by then I'm sure you have gone you've grown into ministry, and to make you the district overseer for these churches, and I mean that's a long time ago anyway, so maybe I still find that a little bit uniquely different from what we know tradition to be.
Well, maybe because my overseer was kind of radical.
Radical. Okay, that would make sense.
And he knew me. He seen me. He knew me. That was the same church that he attended in Albany, New York. And I was active in ministry.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, when I dove in head first, and I didn't have a group of young men. You know, I was the one. If I'm going to get anybody, I got to win people to Christ.
Mm.
Michael Clark, Deacon Michael Clark, I won him to the Lord on my job at Nagamog.
Mm.
You know, Michael Clark and I, we used to party together before either of us got saved. And when I got saved and I shared Christ with him, he got saved
Mm,
and he got on fire. And
mm.
you know, we just keep running for God.
To God be the glory. To God be the glory, man. You have a solid, solid, solid foundation. You started off great. You started off great, and I like what I like about um where ministry is taking you, and you approach the ministry, because God has given you a double package. He has given you a double package. So you're able to articulate on both sides. You can talk to somebody who been where you were, and now you can tell those who have never been where you were what it has been, or what it's been like to be there and here. So that gives you more clout on presenting the word. And again, I said, I respect your knowledge and your contribution, and I'm finding out even now. So, you know how you've come up with it, which I never know, because just meeting somebody and talking to your friend, you don't go into this kind of conversation, that kind of detail to say, tell me, what it's been like as you travel up. So I was curious about did you ever run back into your Rastafarian friend, and if you did, what was his thoughts about your transition?
Um, I felt compelled that I had to go back to them and preach Christ.
Okay, 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 all right, okay.
Um, I remember one time I went to a group of friends, and these were mostly, African American at the time, and I feel I had to witness to them. And I had on this coat, and I have on a button that says Christ is the answer.
Hmm.
And when I walked in, they were getting high. And when they looked at me and they saw Christ is the answer, I think I blew their high. They they couldn't stop laughing.
Cause they were a little bit higher ready, right?
Right. But now they're trying to look at the old Linval
Yeah.
and this guy that is standing there that is saying Christ is the answer.
What happened
When,
to Linval?
when I was the one before pushing the weed, I
Mm,
mean,
right.
I'm buying weed and sharing with them. And now I walked in on their high with a
Hmm.
button that is saying Christ is the answer.
Wow.
They couldn't deal with it. They were, we say, tripping out. They were laughing, and I stood there and I was serious. And I said, what is so funny?
Mm.
And they said, no, Linva, you have to understand that. You have to understand. Before you're telling us that weed is the answer, now you here saying Christ is the answer. We can't deal with that.
So what is really the answer, right? Now we got
With my Rasta friends, they look at me as a Judas.
Sell out.
You sell out.
Betrayal.
You betray Selassie.
Hmm.
And I went there, and I remember going there with a brother named Albert Ferguson. You probably know him. He blows like a clarinet. I think that's the instrument
Hmm.
from the Bahamas. He was a
Oh,
student at the
oh,
time.
I know Ferguson. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a student at the time in Albany, and he went with me and Angela and my sister and a couple others. We went back to that Rasta den to preach Christ to them.
Wow.
And of course, they look at me as a Judas, but I felt like I had to do it. I had to witness to them. But then once I did that, like the Apostle Paul, you
You
dust the
should-
dirt off your
That's how
feet.
you feel. Yeah.
That's,
Right. Wow.
and I never look back. There's nothing um, to influence my mind to go back to where I'm coming from.
And you sure haven't gone back.
No.
Again, my friend, if you're just joining me, I'm talking to Bishop Linval Hendricks. He, pastors right now in Queens, New York, particularly it's the South Ozone Park Church, but he has a long journey, and he has a powerful, powerful ministry, and his ability to articulate and deliver the word comes from his deep knowledge of the word and his long term studying of the word, studying in depth from Rastafarianism to make a discovery on that side to be redirected to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and now he is studied deeper from the Rastafarian and influence to try to understand the biblical terms, and now to come back to study to understand the spiritual aspect of it with a combination of both gives him a great knowledge of presenting the word of God, and he has done that for all of these years, 40 plus years. I think I'm hearing that this man of God has been an influence in this year, and he has had his battles, his physical battles, but boy has God kept him. And I know, Bishop, we cannot finish this because I really want to talk to you beyond your personal experience, and I really would like us to have that conversation by what we were kind of tapping into yesterday. I think that is so relevant for now. But tell me now that you are a district overseer for then, and now you in the 80s comes in, and now you're during the decade of the 80s. Pastoral appointment started in the 80s. Was called upon to leave Albany to go to pastor the Church of God of Prophecy in Buffalo, 288 miles away, of course, for those of us who know that. And the year was in 1982, in the month of July, under the leadership of State Overseer Bishop Barney L. Shragdan. So in the 80s, you were sent from parish overseer, district overseer to Buffalo, and you spent what, 6 years in Buffalo?
Yeah.
And then you were taken from Buffalo. I don't remember if I knew that you were pastoring Hempstead. So tell us about that back and forth journey there. What the experiences were like for you.
Upon arriving in Buffalo, of course, this is my first pastorate. Um, it was a challenge. I was 28 years old. Um, I cried to the Lord,
Hmm.
and of course, God enabled me. Not long after that, I was given the district overseer responsibility for Western New York also. So I was pastor in Buffalo, but I was overseer for Rochester, Waverly, Elmira. Um, it was during that time that the church that I pastored there, Buffalo, New York Church, that was an experience for me that was so beautiful. It was glorious.
Hmm.
That was the first church for me. Um, I'm forever in love with Buffalo.
Mm.
The people of Buffalo, great people. Buffalo might be, some people look at it as the coldest place in New York with so much snow, but they are the sweetest, warmest people in the church that I have ever known.
Mm.
So I was sent from Buffalo after 6 years to pastor the church 234 Jerusalem Avenue in Hempstead.
Hmm.
And I got there, and the people there received me. Again, another great church. We have a wonderful time in the Lord. Um, Pastor Peters, Bishop Peters now,
Clarence.
yes, he was the deacon that worked with me, and he was my Caleb who
Oh.
held up my hand.
Mm.
When my hand would get weary, I wanted to do some things at our local church. It was challenging, but he was always the encourager. And he says, Bishop, you could do this, we can do this.
Mm.
And so he helped me there. And I prayed for him that God would bless him wherever he go, that God will give him men
Mm.
like himself. the
Mm-hmm.
way he was to me.
Wow.
And I pray that God give him men like himself.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I do hope they respect him where he is, because that's a man that I have a lot of love and respect for. So he made my time.
That is news to me. That is news. I don't remember. I'm aware of that. I don't remember. I'm aware of that, but that's news to me. But thanks for sharing that.
Yes, he and his wife, they've been good to me, good to us. And so he helped make pastoring Hempstead a little easier,
Mm-hmm.
because he stood squarely with me. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any opposition at Hempstead. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there was just a wonderful group of people, a given group of people. And again, not long after, I was given the district overseer responsibility for that district also.
Wow. Who was the regional overseer then? That was still Trogdon or
Yes, Bishop Trognan was the overseer that had appointed me um, to Hempstead, and then he called me back to Buffalo.
right. So I saw that after 4 years you were sent back to Buffalo.
Yeah, because Bishop Reed took a pastorate in Tennessee,
Mm.
and the people had begun to scatter, and he wanted me to
Bring them back together.
write, because I had such a great relationship.
Right.
But one thing you learn about people, whenever time people has moved on, they don't generally come back.
That is true.
They have established fellowship somewhere else. They're not coming back, because they don't want it to be said, well, you come back only because Bishop Hendricks is back. No, they're not going to do that.
That's something I said. I don't want you to think, oh yeah, you don't care about the church, you care about Bishop Hendricks.
Yes, but and returning to Buffalo, I experienced a revival. We left Buffalo on a high note
Mm-hmm.
when I first was appointed to Hempstead. But after the 4 years, we went back. That's when God bring in the college students.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there was just a great bunch of young people, out of that group um, was Bishop Bishop Reed, Trevor Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was, you know, Bishop Reed's son at the time, and so Trevor was one of the leading young men in that group,
Mm-hmm.
along with others. There was just a group of college students that they love God. I mean, they love God,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they were the influencing force among their peers. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't the one following some peer pressure.
Mm-hmm.
They created their own peer pressure,
Right.
and I watched them grew and excel. You know,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, we had a great time.
That's incredible. So I remember now because I know that you were there until 95. So just when I came in to Buffalo, when I came into Rochester, you were leaving Buffalo.
Yes,
So I don't even know. I don't remember how we met because you were going out and I'm coming in. I remember how we met and get so connected. I don't remember how that happened, but somehow it happened, man. And I'm still very excited about getting to meet you and getting to know you and getting to fellowship with you and getting to understand some of your story and right where we are now, my goodness. So then you moved on from Buffalo the second time and now you come back to where?
South Ozone Park. I was sent to South Ozone Park under the leadership of Bishop Rufus Rogers.
Was Rogers now.
Yeah, he sent me
He sent me to
to,
Rochester 95. So yeah, he pulled you down from Buffalo. Yeah.
right. So I ended up in South Ozone Park. Um, I was well received by the church. The difference with South Ozone Park and all the other congregation, we have more seasoned age group members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, where they had a core group of deacons there, Deacon Clark, Deacon Francis, um, Deacon Grandison, and Deacon Armsby, plus I shouldn't start calling names
I
because
know.
so many,
Get in trouble when you start to leave some out.
right? And that church, you know, prayed with me, prayed for me. Um, that's what God brought to that church.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you know that that was a church Bishop Barnes pastored, that was the last church he pastored before he went into retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mother Barnes was a prayer warrior. She was one of the mothers who prayed for me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a great time. The young men that were there at the time was Bishop Barnes' son, Del Barnes,
Yeah, yeah.
and Brother Ashmead was in that group of young men. Um, Carlos, quite a few group of young men.
And thank God, most, if not all, of those young men have become real men, mature men now, and still holding on and still doing ministry to God be the glory.
Yeah, we had a good rapport, good relationship to this day. South Ozone Park as being the church where I would say maturity sets in with me on many levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a church that I pray um, with over the most. You know, it's just like God anointed me to pray
Mm-hmm.
when I first came to South Ozone Park,
Mm-hmm.
and some good people there still standing. You know, um, some of them now have gone are going into retirement, um, and I started to feel lonely.
Mm.
Like
You got,
but
you're gonna get more with that Caleb to and Joshua to hold the hand up somewhere, right? You can get more hands to
what
lead.
happened? There is a group of young people at South Ozone Park. Um, I don't know if I could call them young people anymore because they're getting up there in age. You see, when I just started pastoring, I was a young man. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? When
yeah,
I just started getting appointed, I was a young man. I was in my 20s.
right.
But you have a core group there that I I can depend on. My associate there, Minister Vivian Murray, and at the time, um, Pastor Ashmead was not pastoring yet at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but at a crucial time in my life when I got sick, those two were the anchor, Vivian and Denver Ashmead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Minister Vivian Murray and Minister currently Pastor Ashmead, they were my anchor, and they were able to. South Ozone Park was going through strong. So, in spite of the fact that the enemy attacked the pastor,
Mm-hmm.
his health, they stayed buoyant, and the church, a mature church, everybody was in their position doing what they were supposed to do. So I thank God for the opportunity to serve, and is still serving.
Hmm. You know, as you said that, Bishop, and I said we haven't even gotten a chance to talk about your own journey, because that's gonna take some time to talk about your journey, because you've had, as I said in the beginning, you look as good as ever. You look as good as ever, and I give God glory and honor for that. But I have had my moments. I have had my moments, and even though I am not within your congregation, or walking and talking with you day by day, but I've had my moments of scare, my moments of fear, my moments of uncertainty, my moments of what next, my moment of, oh God, is he gonna make it? I've had those moments, right? Because we just hear one thing, and then we thought, and you've had your battles, your journey of ups and downs, your physical challenges, your miracles, the mysteries, and all of those things happen in your life. And now I'm looking at you. Um, let's say 2, 3 years ago, I personally wondered what was going to happen to my friend. But now I'm looking at you, maybe looking as good as I have ever seen you. What has been happening? What's the story? How can you explain that to me and the rest of us?
I could say, and I will say, the grace of God, the prayers of the saints, and the love of God's people.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I talk about Buffalo being the first church that I pastor, and there's always going to be that first love thing.
Hmm.
But the church that I'm currently pastoring, over the past 26 years, um, they have been just champions. Um, no pastor is going to say 100% of the members cooperated with me. No
Hmm.
pastor can say that. Not
Yeah,
even Jesus.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
even Jesus could say that.
You'd have to have a report for all of them, and then you program them, and then you touch the button. But other than that, no.
Right. But had it not been for the level of maturity of that congregation, things probably would be quite different.
Hmm.
But there are people there that genuinely care for their pastor,
Hmm.
that pray for their pastor. Um, I've had when recently I lost a brother.
Hmm.
Okay, Bill Purdy, and a lot of people don't know that I've lived under Bill's Purdy's roof for 8 years.
Wow.
Um, Not because I didn't have a house.
Hmm.
I have a house. Um, but he didn't want me to be alone.
Yeah, I know about that to
He
certain.
didn't want me to be alone. He told me, Pastor, why do you want to go there to be alone? Stay here. And one particular time when I was determined to go home, that night, that very night, I end up in the hospital.
Hmm.
And thank God for his wife, who was there to assist more than one time,
Hmm.
have to drive me to the hospital.
Hmm.
So, um, and the prayers, all I can say is the prayers. Currently, there are some good young men, Brother John Lee,
Hmm.
um, Brother Nathaniel Blackwood,
Hmm.
Peter, and of course, Minister Murray, um, Minister Purdy.
You got some great. Listen, man. If I think we're told to covet good things.
Yeah,
You got some great people at your church, some great gifts and talents and dedicated young men and women who have been so committed for years and years and years and years. Boy, a lot of us in pastoral ministry would love to have what you have, um, uh, consistently, and the volume. And I'm not saying we don't all have wonderful, dedicated. We do have, but boy, the range of what you have on a consistent basis, not sporadic, but decades. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I, Bishop, one of the things that stays with me is the fact that God has given to us so many children, so many young people that we did not focus on and capitalize
Hmm.
on them. Um, when I look at a child, when I look at a young man or a young woman, and I see the potential in them, the young Samuel that is in the house,
Hmm. Hmm.
the young David that is in the house, that we don't give attention to.
Right.
If they say a word, we find it amusing. We find it, amazing. We clap our hands and we're entertained by their little message that they give, their speech. But it is more than entertainment. It is more than this cute little girl from children's church or this cute little boy. Um, that right there is a potential bishop in the church. That right there is a potential woman of God in the church.
Hmm.
And there was a time when in pastoral tenure, we're there for 2 or 3 years and then we're sent away someplace.
Right. Right.
But I think that the church finally realized that, you have to build community.
That is to the peril of the church, the stability and the growth of the church and the development of the people. I agree with you.
So now I have men and women standing now that when I went to South Ocean Park, they were 7 years old. They were 7 years old. And so you have to give them the opportunity. You have to show your confidence in them,
Hmm.
and trust them. Because if you don't, you sit around waiting until they turn 16. By the time they turn 16, they're getting a part-time job and
Yeah.
getting ready to go to college. So what about while they're 10 years old, while they are in the cradle?
Hmm.
You have to begin to
Feed and
pour
nurture.
into them. You got to prophesy to them. You got to talk to them. You got to speak into them. You got to tell them that, listen, you are an A+ student. You need to be on the honor roll. That's what I see in you.
Hmm.
You got to prophesy. You got to talk to them. You got to encourage them. And you have to give them opportunity to lead. You know, um, that's, I've seen it so much, Bishop. I'm at youth camp. I watch these young people at youth camp year after year after year. Where are the pastors? Where are the leaders? You know who's there constantly? Pastor Eulalie Hall and myself as the male.
Hmm.
And even when I reach a point where I say, you know something, it's time for some other young men to step up, Pastor Hall is still there. I respect that woman.
Yeah.
Well, if she was a man, she would have a bishop license by now.
Ages ago, she would.
Oh yes, but she need the respect,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I thank God though. I seen young people who stick with the Church of God. They stick with it. Some of them, and even when they leave, they're serving in other churches.
Hmm.
And I just wish that there were more of them. right now, standing in the wings,
Hmm.
and not even standing in the wings. They need to be out front right now. You know,
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Bishop. That's gonna be that's gonna be our next, if we get a chance, and I'm sure we'll get a chance by God's help to talk again, because you're one of the most rational minds, one of the most uh, with the best ability to reason, with an insight into the church, from the youth level, the ministry level, to the projection of the future, to see what may have gone wrong, what do we need to do, and how do we help to shape the younger generation into into long term ministry. That's something that we will have to talk about at another point. But my friend, listen, it is just really really good to talk to you. Good to have you. I know you're busy, and I know you have your studies coming up, man. I thank you for taking this time out to talk with me. I'm talking to Bishop Linval Hendricks. This man, as I said, when I posted in the flyer, and I put unique. I put the word unique on the flyer. Somebody actually messaged me on on Facebook to ask me what makes you unique. So I said to the person, you'll have to listen this conversation, because you'll have to listen to the conversation. So you are unique about your experience. We can there are a couple of things that are unique about you, that we can go into. One, you begin to you were this overseer before you become a pastor. That is unique. That's not the norm. Your Rastafarian is in background. Your study into the depth of that, your understanding of that, and the transition back into Christianity, and what we have heard earlier, and makes you unique. Not a lot of us have that kind of testimony. We all have a testimony, but that is a unique testimony. And I have often, not often, but sometimes I made mention. I maybe don't call the name, but I said one of our bishops. When I'm talking about what redeeming grace can do, I said one of our bishops was a Rastafarian, and to have a Rastafarian who is so influenced become a Christian to the point of coming into a bishop, it speaks of the profound power of redemption, and the work of the Spirit of God, that you can't really talk somebody into that. Something have to happen bigger than a man's mouth can tell somebody about.
Bishop, I would like to say that I believe it demonstrates the power of a mother's prayer and a father's prayer. That's what I believe was the power behind.
Starting point, the foundation has been laid.
Right. My parents, they prayed. And I say to parents today, they never give up on your children. Never give up on your children.
Hmm.
Um, love them. God gave them to you. And whatever your vision is of them, never give up on your children. My mother never give up on me. My father never give up on me. You know, my father said this to my mother once. He called my mother's Clarice, but he said Clar.
Hmm.
He said, Clar, I am not talking to Linval anymore. He said, from now on, I'm talking to God about Linval.
Linval, all right, yeah. We've heard those kind of things, I've talked to him. I talked to him enough, and I don't see it working. So I'm going to talk to the big boss about him now.
And he did it. God heard his prayer.
Thank God for that. Thank God for that, man. Thank God. I'm talking to Bishop Linval Hendricks, my friend, the minister, a strong, solid minister of the kingdom and the gospel of God. And boy, if you've never met this man, you need to really meet him. And if you have met him, you know at least some of the things what I'm talking about. I'm sure you've never heard his own story. I'm gonna take one little moment break and come back, and then I'm gonna give you the last word, Bishop, to wrap it up until and promise me that we're gonna come back to talk about those things that we need to talk about. That is not pertaining to me and you particularly, but pertaining to the people who we are hoping to leave behind.
Okay.
All right. So when I come back, my friends, I just want to tell you about my book. I do have a book, and you can get a copy from me. If you can get it anywhere, but if you get a copy from me, you can get an autograph copy. So here is my book. And you still have a chance to hit your share button. It's not too late. And if you didn't get it live in this moment, you can always get it again and again and again. Because once we are done, my friends, it will always be there available on Facebook and on YouTube. You can always share it until the end of the year. You can keep on sharing it until all of your friends hear the story of my friend Bishop Linval Hendricks. All right, Bishop, what would you say as you wrap up on this conversation? I'm so pleased to have you, and I hope you promise that we'll talk again.
Um, yes, we will continue the conversation. And I want to say thank you, Dr. Orville Beckford, Senior, my friend. I thank God for you. You and your wife is a tremendous ministry team.
Thank you.
I have a lot of respect for you and her and for your children.
Thank you.
I thank God for this program that you have pioneered. Let's talk. And I appreciate you invited me on. And so to all of
I
the
appreciate you accepting the invite.
yes, so yes, I have prayer line that is going. It's a global prayer ministry,
Mhm.
and we meet every first Saturday, 3:30 a.m. For prayer.
3:30 a.m.
3:30 a.m. in the prayer. If you go to COGOP, SOP.org, you will find information there on how to get on the prayer line. That is COGOP, SOP.org, South Ozone Park website, and you'll get the information there.
Mhm.
I thank you for this time, and I just want to encourage us during this time of COVID 19,
Mhm. Mhm.
that we stay safe,
Yeah.
um, wear your mask, do your hand sanitizer. Personally, I have taken the vaccine. It's up to you, it's available to you. If you want to take it, by all means. If you don't want to take it, that's your prerogative. But I believe that you should maximize your body immune system in whatever way you can do it. Um, Take care of yourself. God bless you. God bless you and your ministry.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Bishop.
I appreciate you a lot, man. I really do appreciate you, and I pray that God's hands will continue to be on you and your ministry. and that He continues to touch your body. I know He has already touched your mind. Your mind is already touched. Now we just ask Him to, and He has already touched your body too. I just ask that He keeps His hand on your body and keep you healthy, because you have a lot to offer to the kingdom, and we have a lot to learn from you. And I pray that God gives you long life to be able to deposit that into others, so that they will be able to deposit it into others also. Follow the Paul and Timothy trend. I hope that we'll find a lot more of those in our generation. Paul influencing Timothy, and Timothy continuing to pass it on to others. May God bless you, my friend. And I hope you have a good evening, a good rest of the day, and long life and good health to you.
Thank you, my brother.
Stay right there. Stay right there. I'll close. I'll do my outro, and then I'll come right back, and we just say goodbye offline. All right. So God bless you, my friends. Well, thank you for checking in on ORB Ministries. I trust that you will share with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, and stay tuned, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation.